Greetings, comrades, and welcome to the Eastern Border. Now, after the last episode, I was surprised to receive a lot of messages and emails asking me how to find the old prison culture episodes. Well, turns out that I had forgotten how long ago I had recorded them. So, there was a necessity to basically send you all guys to one place, because at the end of this episode in the show notes, there will be links to both of these episodes. And also, I just wanted to make a short kind of in between my news episodes one where I give you just the basic gist and what this is, like 101, super surface level overview about this situation. Because again, these things are so deep that I have been re-recording this intro and this episode. I mean, like, this is the seventh, eighth maybe recording. I don't even know. The thing is, every time I catch myself repeating the stuff that I have said previously in those episodes, and it's a massive rabbit hole. And I just want to give you the notion about why this is such a rabbit hole here. Because, oh boy. So, what this whole thing is that due to historical reasons, due to basically how many people Stalin had put into prison, this prison culture became super important. It was created in a way in gulags where political prisoners were together with career prisoners, and it was a huge mess, and no one liked the Stalin and Soviet Union there. Basically a way how to internally organize prisoners amongst themselves, and the thieves managed to get on top of this situation. So they became the top class in the hierarchy. And then, they organized themselves this way to counter administration and to run themselves in there. And then, when they came back after the rehabilitation period, that steeped deep inside our collective consciousness here in the post-Soviet sphere, which is a bad term, I know, but how do I describe all these countries on this side of the Warsaw Pact countries? I don't know. Well, this, my region of the planet, basically, that part. So these things became ingrained in our minds to such a point where if you watch currently any Russian analyst about the war, well, then he will definitely have mentioned something that comes from these, because a lot of our slang comes from this prison culture, a lot of our understandings come from our prison culture, and that's a bit of a tragedy as well, since a lot of our negative aspects come from this prison culture, prison laws. Понятие, by the way, is, I would call them notions. Notions are concepts, really. Notions are a better word, I think. They are quite close to the original. And, well, notions normally would be each separate law, which would be combined together in the thieves' law. But, when these days people just say, I'm living by the notions, or I know what the notions are, then you know what they mean. It's that sort of thing. But yeah, they steeped into our collective subconscious to the point where we still use a lot of language coming from that era. This is where, a lot of the swear words come, a lot of also dark things like extreme intolerance towards anyone who's different, a lot of violence, cheating, that stuff, organized crime-related stuff. So that's not quite nice. Now, why they're important is, unlike, I don't know the unwritten rules by which, say, Italian mafia lives by, but as far as I understand it, they are more like, traditions and things like that. Not so with this. See, these things, basically, as I had them explained best to me by a person who was very close into these things, who was quite high in the hierarchy at some point, he told me that these are very strict laws written in extremely vague ways. And, well, in general, yes, but there's ridiculous amounts of traditions and minor details that you'll find out about in the older episodes. But unlike anything else, well, like I said, they were created to basically keep up an order inside of a gulag, okay? And surprisingly enough, they function. Like, you can organize a society based on these laws, and it will work. To an extent, to a perverse way, compared to our modern society, but it will work. This is a great way how to basically apply extremely violent, evil type of order in a totally chaotic society. They were made in a brutal environment, and, well, they managed to work, and they were respected enough because they were enforced by the very top dogs of organized crime throughout the Soviet Union. well, back in the day when they had like more power. Of course, it waxes and wanes, but the notions are still there. And again, we try to get rid of them because, oh boy, the cultural significance of these things is what derailed my previous attempt at recording this episode, so I won't touch them right now. But they're somewhere there in the older episodes, I promise. Basically, and when the 90s happened then, well, obviously, as the organized crime gangs gained massive power upon the collapse of the Soviet government, they were living by these laws at that point. The leaders were these rulers, these thieves in law. So they had to organize this anarchy between the organized crime gangs amongst themselves, and they picked this system, which was theirs by nature, which had just traveled and continued there, well, since, the Soviet era ended. Like, this was just continuation there. And like I said, it works. It's perverse, it's awful, but it works. It works if you want to instill some sort of fear, chaos, and dominance over a bunch of angry, unruly people who possibly hate each other. But, yeah. And so people in the 90s very well learned these laws because, everything was run by organized crime back then. There was racketeering, there was, insanity. Younger people might, not know exactly what's happening there, but if you grew up in the 90s like I did, then I just knew these things and the traditions and what they meant by osmosis, basically. And I think so did everyone. And the older generation, they knew them by the stories that they were told by, everyone who was in prison or knew someone that was in prison. It was just so massive and widespread. I mean, when people state that Soviet Union was a prison of nations, they're only half joking. Half because, half was actually in prison, in the real one, so. But the thing is, they, throughout all of this period, especially in the 90s, for my generation, and through the Soviet era for the older one, they became ingrained and became kind of, the prison slang went through every day. And so certain stereotypes about people went through with it. And, what does this have to do with, say, Putin and Prigozhin? Well, Prigozhin has been sitting in prison for 10 years before he, came out. He sat in prison in Soviet era, and now he runs Wagner Group. And he literally lives by these traditions. And Putin, after there was no longer KGB to work for, he moved to St. Petersburg and was quite involved in these organized crime gangs. And like I said, they internally lived by these rules because they had been living by them all their lives. And if you're there on the top, then you kind of have to enforce them even if you don't personally believe everything. Because obviously, if you just Google up them and you find the versions written by the thieves themselves, they always did it. Oh, back in the old days, they were created by the whites who fought against the reds. It was in the 20s, and we were just fighting for freedom. They always try to make Robin Hoods of themselves, okay? But just like Soviet leaders had internalized communism or their version of socialism in their lives, because. Make no mistake, Gorbachev seriously believed in socialism. He truly believed that maybe he could keep the Soviet Union together. There are people who seriously believe ideologies. So the same thing could be said about Putin and this. This is what Putin firmly believes in. This is his ideology. This is how he views the world. It's how he grew up with and gained any prominence with, and how his whole cohort works. He's just now the biggest guy on top. Now, but what does this whole mean? Because I've been now explaining, again, super basic levels, and everything of this that you hear from me in this episode has 10 to 20 sub-layers, and like I said, those are old episodes. I just want to get this done because I have my news episodes to work on. So what does this mean is that it's kind of a vague code with a lot of subcodes. A lot of it is all about organizing day-to-day life in prison, because that's important. That, who runs the whole jail cell, because in Russian prisons and back in Soviet prisons, they had huge barrack-type cells with 30 to 50 people inside of them. And so that there wouldn't be any fights, someone had to keep up order. And so this, by the way, is the answer to my question that I always ask people: what's the difference between the red and black prisons? In the red prisons, order was kept by the administration. In the black prisons, it was kept by these organized crime guys who sat on the top of the ladder. So that's the thing. Blacks are run by the organized crime and reds are run by the state. So over there in prison, there are whole sort of rules and regulations. Whenever you get something from the outside world, you always have to pay in some part of it to the common pool, which is then, given out to those whose relatives couldn't give them anything, or who were like beaten up by the guards, all that stuff. Or they organize everyday life. And to make it happen in such a world, one of the most important aspects of this whole system is that there are various suits. They call them suits, like in the card game, like card suits. It's basically a caste system, but except this has a gambling spin on it, because everything is tied to these gambling things there as well. And, there are a lot of subsuits, of course, but basically there are three types of them. On the top of everything sits the bratva. They are the career criminals, the organized crime guys who run the prison's internal security, and they are also the guys who keep in touch with the outside world, who through their prisons still control drug trades, smuggling, all sorts of stuff. They are the guys who are there, and they know that this is their profession. Then there are the muzhiki. Muzhik is basically just average dude. I suppose. Peasant man, just a man, but the derogatory term of it, sort of ish. But like mujiks are respected. They are the guys who just happen to be caught for smoking weed in Russia. So you smoke weed in Russia, you get sent to jail for 2 years, and you just go there, right? And then you're your average guy. You haven't denounced yourself in any way or form, but you also don't want to be a career criminal. These people, they are obviously in the hierarchy way below the bratva, because bratva sits on top. Again, tons of subsuits, whatever. But basically, bratva sits on top, organizes everything, has ties to outside world. Mujiks are just your regular guys who have to pay taxes to bratva, still pay in bratva's common pool, and they're the guys who have to do... They have to do stuff for the bratva sometimes, and they basically they're kind of they're kind of the serfs, but in a better position since they're respected. They are basically the middle class of prison culture. And then there are the petuhi, the apushinli, or the so-called roosters. They are well, first of all, if you are a homosexual in such system, then you are that thing. Second of all, there are many other ways how does one can accidentally really turn into a member of this subsuit. Again, tons of difficulties. But basically, in general, they have to live in their own separate cells. They can be beaten up constantly. They used to be raped and killed, but then they stopped because of how easy it is to get into that case. That's kind of the ultimate punishment. And there's no way back. I mean, if you make one stupid mistake and you don't know what's happening, you'll be basically pushed down to go live by the parasha, which is kind of, the name for the common little toilet bowl that's sitting somewhere there in your 30 to 50 people barrack cell. These are the very lowest of the low. Again, every homosexual ever goes straight in there. And you could go in there for really stupid reasons as well. Again, more details there. But for example, what's important is that they're basically untouchables. You're only allowed them to even beat them with legs, okay? And even if you shake one's hand, you're automatically done. No one's going to talk to you ever again, and it's an ultimate pariah status, and you can't go back from it. And it's a pretty horrid story. Again, lots of it about this. Basically, they're the undercase, and you can get in there for basically anything. There are strict rules that certain crimes are not punished by turning you into one of these subcaste members. It's a whole complex system that borders on the real legal system in general. But that's how it operates. So, in general, everyone, if someone calls someone a petuch, that's kind of, the ultimate fear of this situation. And it's always violent and it's always rude, and it's a sad state to be in. So when Prigozhin speaks about petukhs, he speaks about these people who have either through doing something or just being a bit deviant, either homosexuals or, well, I don't know. There are truly dumb reasons. Thankfully, those are kind of going away. But basically, these are the people whose status is so bad that if they have to go back to prison once again in the future, these are the guys who will enter your jail cell, and they will have to state openly that they are of this caste, and then no one will touch them. And if they accidentally touch someone, like they didn't say something about like the fact if they didn't publicly announce very openly their status and didn't act accordingly, and they accidentally touch someone, well then this will explain the super violence of this system. The person whom they touched, it doesn't matter that it happened accidentally. No, he's automatically also one of these by this point, instantly. And he never can go back. And he will also be forced to, basically do whatever and forced into sexual slavery sometimes and awful things. Oh, by the way, you can have violent sex with the petukhs, but you can't touch them any other way. It makes no sense. Again, it's illogical, but it is how it operates. But yeah, if this random petukh guy does this, then yeah, there's no way back for the guy whom he touched. But the petukh himself will also then be killed afterwards, because that's an unspeakable, unforgivable crime. Like the worst that you can make. This is the internal logic of this happening. But that's happening inside of prisons. So I'm just talking about these petukhi because that's sort of at the focus of this is you don't want to be that guy. And if you touch that guy, you become that guy. And not only that, there's again, substitutes and rules, and I speak about them there. But just watch out from that. So this is what he means by petukhi. But now we move to the upper echelons of the situation. Mujiks just, they pay their taxes to the bratva. They don't get beaten up. Because again, there are no random prison fights in the Soviet prison system in this thing. That is bespredel. Basically, someone is not living by понятие. If you honestly have a kind of a argument there in this whole prison system thing, you honestly go to your representative in the room. Basically, someone sent from Bratva to look over your jail cell, and then you talk to this person, you explain to him your position, he might call the other person with whom you have a conflict with, and then he will judge according to these laws. And it can be done. They are very strict, very brutal, but they operate like this, and the punishments can be various, and you have to listen to this guy, or you might just not wake up at one point. This is how it operates there. But again, on to the top of things. See, the prison part is very brutal, but it essentially operates to keep up the organized crime alive and the people who work there even alive in prisons, and to make sure that in these big jail cells there is no nonsense going on. Everyone lives by some sort of rules. And like I said, in red colonies, these are less widespread. The administration is brutal and controls everything. And, well, yeah, they are the administration ones, the red ones. The black ones are run by this, basically. Navalny, meanwhile, by the way, sits in the very red colony. And interestingly enough, in Russia, the whole mess with the administration system and how prison administration treats prisoners is so brutal that being in the red prison is considered to be a way worse situation to be in than to be in a black prison. And the black prison has all these prison castes. Well, unofficially, but administration respects them, just so you knew. So imagine the situation where you have literally a sub-caste of these people, these petukhi, and there's about 8 to 10% of all prisoners are in this caste. About the same are in the very top, and about 80% are just the mujiks. But yeah, if this is considered more normal than whatever administration is doing, then it's weird. And back when I made my previous episode, I remember when I was shocked when I remember that, what was it? At one of these episodes that I spoke about this, the Bratva had issued a new law, an edict, because these lawful thieves can issue an edict, and it has to be spread through all the prisons. It's a whole system. Like I said, it's basically a governmental operation there. And it said that if the administration rapes you during interrogations as torture, then you're not counting as petukh, because otherwise they would have to, by these traditions, put in so many of the prisoners in the Petuch case, then that would just ruin the whole hierarchy completely, that they chose to make this amend. Okay, so just a side note, but just so you knew that it is still very active to this day. But again, about the top. The top technically has 6 main laws. First of all is the fact that he has to basically obey and support the thieves' idea, the whole idea of these laws existing. Then they're supposed to be honest to one another, and that's very specific to one another. It specifically does not mention being honest to anyone else. The higher-up thieves have to be respectful and honest, but only and only to other thieves. That, by the way, involves the fact that any card game amongst these highest echelon guys, it has to be like honest and pointed down everything. Again, everything's kind of gambling based here. And they also, they can't legally, by the old traditions, can't have any family. They have to organize the whole obshak, the common pool of, keeping everyone who's starving in Russian prisons alive from their gang. They have to organize all this stuff, all the logistics of smuggling and stuff into prisons, logistics of drug deals, scam calls, all this stuff. They run the thing. They are the boss, basically. The lawful thieves. Well, now some of them have bought their position. Again, when prisoners start to complain, criminals start to complain about something that, something's dishonest and some things have changed. Yeah, that's a bit silly. But basically, their upper echelon rules are sort of specific in the sense that they also, they can't have families and they can't cooperate with non-prisoners and all this stuff. But they're taken very seriously because, again, this is taken very seriously and ingrained with you if you are in this society, because the punishments for breaking any of this stuff, and again, it's super vague. It's super vague, but super enforced, unless you are in a prison, and then you really have to find out things because a lot of tiny details. By the way, the younger the age of the prisoner, the harsher and dumber that his tiny rules are, because these days, and even back like in the 60s and 70s, no one will just instantly kill you for random nonsense. That's not for понятия. Понятия are to basically produce order. Punishments for breaking it are severe, but that's if you're extra stupid. There are warnings, and there will be people coming to talk over with you what's happening, and try to solve things in normal way. Once, but that's the thing. It's not there to create chaos. It's there to truly be a lawful legal society, basically. And now these top of a gang guys, these lawful thieves, they can become such if they follow through this. They have to be crowned. That's a whole ceremony. There's a ton of rules, and basically at the point when you get to the top, you have been living with this system in your head for such a long time, and you have probably seen so many people been turned into petuchi and then totally their lives destroyed, and you probably have seen people die and everything, that you have internalized this to the point where there is no going back. See, you simply cannot have been involved in organized crime in post-Soviet sphere sometime in the 90s or even above that and not live by these laws. It is just unthinkable. It's not something you grow out of. It's super hard, and they are all for life. Like I said, if you are a petuch, sometimes in so sort of young age, you were 16, you got into, I don't know, caused a car crash, got into jail for, I don't know, 2 weeks, okay? And someone, did something really dumb and stupid to you. I don't know. Like I said, you might have accidentally even just shaken the hand of someone who is in the cast already, and then you're done for life. And when I mean for life, I mean for life. And not like people just go on the streets and do this, but yeah, I mean, even when you'll be like 60 or 70, this is still going to be waving over you. And I'm going to focus on this because that punishment is so severe and so brutal and so evil that a lot of cases happen where these guys just commit suicide upon making some stupid mistake. A lot of stories. Again, well, it's not always brutal, not that brutal. Order is being kept. People are trying to make sure that, only those who are considered deserving become petuchs. But what is deserving is totally weird from normal understanding, obviously. But still, order is trying to be kept, but the punishments are so bad that, you're going to have to kind of trust me on this one, because I do not know how to convince you after saying all of this, if you still don't believe me, that these people, they have to move into the society. And Putin has been hanging out with other lawful thieves, and he is treated as an equal by them at that point. And then he started commanding around the other oligarchs, who also all had criminal ties, right? So stands to reason that he is one of them, quite obviously, because, again, this is one of these things which you tell to anyone from the post-Soviet sphere, my age and a bit older, and they'll just say, well, of course, there is no question about this. He lives by these laws. And that's the thing. In these laws, like I told you, the only rule is that the thieves have to be honest to one another, and of course that's a bit broken, but if it's broken, then, you can get into some actual trouble for that. There are collective judges and collective meetings and organizings and kind of conventions of these thieves, and new laws are... It's a whole legal system, a complex one at that. And again, I apologize for the cat. He's decided to be extremely active today, and I'm not going to record this for the eighth time. I have things to do, like making a news episode, and this is long as it is. But the thing is that it is considered dishonorable among these thieves to basically be honest towards anyone else. And they're supposed to treat their subordinates like garbage, and in that system, basically being honest to someone who is not a thief is considered a bad thing. Not if you're in the bottom. No. If you're on top, if you're in the bottom, you can still scam people from outside world easily. But there is no even the concept of an honest deal at all. It doesn't exist, because the system was created in the Gulag, and it was specifically created to somehow manage angry people who hated each other. Okay, and like I said, it works. It works for this society. It organizes crime. It is very good for organized crime, yes. But within these laws, there is no place for an honest deal. There are rules about how you shouldn't cheat in card games. There are rules about winning and scamming. But again, this is all based on gambling. In the very structure of this whole thing, this is all about a zero-sum game. For someone to win, someone must lose, because that's how card games work. And if you noticed, every sort of classification is called a suit from card games. You have to be good at card games too if you want to be this thief in law. It is just ingrained in the culture that, there's the guy who wins and the guy who loses, and that's it. And you can be either one or the other. There is no win-win situation. There is no honest deal. It does not exist as a concept in their head. Because all of this is based around, this structure thing, but again, very card gamey, very gambling, and like I said, no concepts of honest deals whatsoever. So this is why people just don't believe when Putin makes a deal, because he is from this system. To him, it's just unimaginable. If there's an honest deal going on somewhere there, then Putin thinks he's being scammed because he's not winning, but because he just cannot comprehend how is this even possible. And this also shows when, by the way, this very specifically shows when Putin himself has been speaking about democracies. And this is a tangent that I kind of want to go on to here because I didn't go into this in previous episodes. When Putin speaks about democracies, then he honestly does not even believe such a thing is possible. This is why there are always these rumors about, how everyone organized some sort of revolution somewhere. Sure, I totally believe that the United States had an impact in a lot of places in the world. And maybe even in Ukraine, maybe they supported some activists or something. But I know for certain that the very basic impact for the whole Maidan situation did not come from anywhere outside Ukraine. It came from the people who were there because of how their president, who was totally a corrupt crook and also was part of this whole system, well, how he treated all this situation. See, Putin firmly believes that elections are rigged everywhere and that people are only angry at him because he's being caught and he's not doing it the proper right way, how the European colleagues do that. And Girkin and other pro-war guys as well, people who have been, with deep connections into this world and who have internalized this whole system, they truly believe this. They truly believe that there are literally zero elections whatsoever. And that everywhere else is just as corrupt. And that's not some sort of a fake thing. This is the honest opinion. So when Putin thought that Ukraine is getting more Europeanized, he couldn't possibly comprehend that people would do stuff on their own. The same way he always attacks the West about money. But however, again, another thing that quite clearly shows, besides the fact that he uses this slang constantly, if you remember at one point in the past he spoke about terrorists and how in one of these speeches how they should be beaten up in the bathroom. That is absolutely prison slang, because this is the only place where you can beat things up. Мочить в сортире. Sortir is the specific bathroom which is in the prison cell of the 50 meters. He uses jokes from this sphere, just to illustrate my point. Again, this is the 8th recording and my cat is driving me insane today. Anyway, Putin just lives by this situation. He just couldn't comprehend this, and he couldn't comprehend this at the beginning of the war either. That was very, very visible. Because, according to his plans, he expected that, everyone is corrupt. He rules over things, and he rules over this perfectly corrupt system, which, on paper runs on the Constitution, but no one cares about the Constitution, because these are the real laws, which he considers important. Not the Constitution of the Russian Federation. No one cares about that piece of paper. If you haven't noticed yet, then, for example, even the very existence of Wagner Group is unconstitutional. And he treats Constitution just, as a random piece of paper. It holds no meaning whatsoever in Russian Federation. It's like no one lives by the Constitution, and like even the new law signed up by the conscription law that I spoke about in the last episode, that is utterly anti-constitutional. Again, Constitution is a piece of paper. This is the real law by which he actually operates. So he thought that in Ukraine people would operate the same way, that the local governors would be just as corrupt, and that that they would only care about money and that they could be easily bribed. And as far as I know, Putin was genuinely surprised that some people might actually have genuine feelings of patriotism. He is just impossible. He cannot comprehend such things, you see. Girkin can, because Girkin has, he has some sort of negative attitude towards these prison laws. He hates Prigozhin because Prigozhin absolutely, openly lives by these prison laws. But Girkin himself understands them at least. And he's impacted by them. But he despises them as something, as Girkin sees as something below him, because he considers himself a monarchist, which is, again, stupid, but, they still tie through everything. And Putin, by his own actions, by everything he does constantly, But if you look at what Putin does from your perspective, okay, from everyday perspective, and you think that he operates by some sort of written constitution or things that might benefit him by Western standards, then it makes no sense. But if you look at Putin's actions through this prison law system, then it all falls perfectly into place and is perfectly predictable. Of course, he believes that Ukraine will fall in 3 days because, he honestly believes that everyone is corrupt, just as the guys he put in there, in Russia. And he put the governors in Russia because that's the normal thing that you do. You take care of your, clan. You take care of your gang. We even know the name of Putin's organized crime gang. It's called Cooperative Ozero, or Cooperative Lake. Okay, so it's a thing. And it's been like that since the 90s. And this just is everything that is about Putin. This is Putin's internal mindset, internal structure, and everything that he thinks about and dreams about. So if you don't know the fact that there are these thieves' laws, that they are internalized, and the case system, and there's, like I said, many sub-rules. This is just very, very skimming on top things, and this is already 35 minutes. And yes, I've been going on tangents. It's just because a lot of these concepts are so deep and require so much explanation that I'm just trying to get words into my mouth to kind of skim down on the long scenarios that I wrote for those previous 2 episodes, to kind of smash them down. And I'm not very good at this because, again, catch and working on news episodes. But yeah, what you need to take away from all this bit chaotic mess by the end, I'm very sorry about that, is that these laws are internalized. Everyone knows them because they have been there and enforced by people of authority. And, they wax and wane and they change sometimes, but the basic principle is that once you are a part of that world, you can never get out of it. You can't. And secondly, you have to take care of your own clan, just like the Vor v Zakonie, the lawful thief, is responsible for his buddies in prison. He has to take care of them and gather taxes from other prisoners to feed them and stuff. This is how Putin operates. This is his buddies, just, the new tax, the warm places he puts them in. He gets them good jobs in Gazprom and everywhere. Yeah, that's it. And what happened in the 90s, when the whole period ended, when he consolidated this whole thing, it wasn't like cleansing of oligarchs. I mean, it might look like that from a Western perspective, but what it actually was, and we can know that it was that way because we have tons of proof about Putin's own mega corrupt dealings and everything, and how he actively hides his family because he's not allowed to have one by thieves' law. Just saying. But yeah, he basically did a gang war overtake of everything. And this is, by the way, how up until today government can take away your business, because small businesses are destroyed in Russia. I mean, if you are doing something that, is not looking good, or sometimes not even that, if you just have a successful business that makes a lot of money, then the government will just come over to your place and just do random checks every day, 17 checks per day, until you just sell it off to some government official for extremely cheap monies, and then it's going to be owned by some local governor or some politician or something, Putin's buddy. It's still a normal practice there in Russia. The situation of small and medium businesses is just downright dreadful there. And this is why. But, okay, I understand how this has been super chaotic. Sadly, this system is super complex. It's ingrained into culture. We try to get rid of it. It causes problems. It has super specific rules about everything in prison life as well. Certain tattoos mark you as a petuch. Certain tattoos signify how many times you've been in prison. There are rules about how to specifically eat certain dishes, where you can eat, with whom you can eat, where you can sleep, how often can you do, random things, how often can you drink the very special super hardcore tea. This, it's very vague on top, it's brutal on bottom, and it's just insane if you delve into this stuff. It is very complex, and like I said, if you look at Putin from this perspective, then he makes perfect sense. He acts like a thief, he looks like a thief, he literally has hanged out with thieves, he's done everything, this just... The only thing he hasn't done is he hasn't come out openly and stated that he is one of these people. But not like he needs to do that when he's doing things that are obvious to everyone living in this area. And again, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be claiming that, that's just normal for everyone and this is just, something similar in the West. No, this isn't. This isn't the internal... the West just don't have this mega in-depth internal system. Why? Because you didn't have gulags. You did not have gulags, and you did not have political prisoners, literally professors of law. For example, professors of law, professors of various sciences, really educated people, the intelligence, obviously, whom Stalin sent to prisons to die, mingling together with thieves and brutal repeat offenders, and somehow coming up with a bizarre system. This is what makes it interesting, because These laws are obviously made by a unique, perverse marriage of two worlds trying to survive in a bizarre manner. And it operates there, and it is there, and getting rid of these things, because, again, this is why, for example, we have a lot of homophobic people and racist people, because, again, they're different, and this is bad by these thieves' laws. This is, by the way, also where, for example, just the final point, to finally illustrate to you how deep this whole culture thing is with these понятия, these thieves' laws, and how they are ingrained in the everyday society, not even the people who are like involved in this, like Prigozhin was, and he can't get away from this, and he hasn't been into prison for years. He runs Wagner Group. He lives by these laws, and he now worries about Petoks fighting together with the common troops. Okay, that's how serious this is. It's not something that they pay lip service to. This is what they live to. So if someone is going to try to tell me that Putin is not operating by these laws, then I don't know. You might as well tell me the earth is flat or something. It is not possible. And again, to show you, do you know the Slav squat, right? Yeah, that comes from here. Slav squat is the thing that you associate most with Eastern Europe, with Russia, comes from the fucking понятия, from the prison law. Because it was considered zapadlo. Zapadlo is the general term for everything that can make you a petuch. For some dumb reason, because all of these things are dumb, it was considered zapadlo for a while to sit on the cold prison floor. Well, originally it was there because the prison floor was cold and you could get sick, and if you got sick then you couldn't work and then you would get punished, everything. Basically, all these explanations that we would have, they're just combined into one short thing and said, you can't do this because then you'll become a petuch. It's easier to explain this to a bunch of prisoners. Less explanation. But basically, yeah, it was totally illegal to sit on the cold floor, and, there are not enough beds, people sleep in shifts. So how do you relax your legs? Well, you Slav squat. You're not sitting on the floor, but you're relaxing your legs and you're on the ground, and you can balance that way. That's where this comes from. The most iconic thing that people just imagine, which is like in all the memes. Prison culture. And then, all the songs and all the slang things. All of this is like from here. All this randomness. So a person who, just because Putin's a president doesn't mean he isn't also a thief. But yeah, that's it. This was so long, and again, I'm very, very sorry. My cat has decided to destroy my recordings today. I tried to put this together from many takes, and what was supposed to be a 15-minute episode where I coherently explain everything got turned into a big one. Oh boy. And I was supposed to be finishing this up. I'll go back to work. This was meant to be some sort of an in-between anyways. But at least I hope it gave you some interest in maybe listening to the other episodes as well. Or, at the very least, I tried. Because this is a very complex and deep subject. And again, if you don't believe me, yeah, literally just find a Russian journalist. Any Russian journalist, a Ukrainian journalist, Belarusian journalist, anyone, okay? Or analyst. And just ask him, you can do that. I know a lot of you guys who listen to this show probably can do that. Just find one and ask him, hey, do you think that Putin kind of runs country according to понятия? And then, he's going to be a bit stunned because do you know what понятие is? And then he's going to try to explain that, well, kind of. I mean, he does things a bit differently from the traditional laws, but in general, yeah. Look, yes. So it is what it is. Okay. I highly doubt you actually enjoyed this episode because it was super chaotic and it killed me to make this. And next episode is going to be old news again. If you want to support the show, consider becoming my patron at patreon.com/theeasternborder. Or you can listen to this episode without advertisements on theeasternborder.lv. Also, we have this Crying Girkin t-shirt thing going on. But more about that in the next episode. Which is going to be sane, I hope. But, you know what? This is kind of a fitting episode when I speak about something as vague, yet as strictly enforced and well-defined as понятие. До свидания, товарищи. And remember, happiness is mandatory.